Hi, I'm Annika Johnson from Al Johnson's in Sister Bay. I hope you enjoy my new video series called Door County Girl. These are stories of my life, the people and places that I love, and of course how we all survive here in northern Wisconsin. You can come back as often as you like, but don't forget to subscribe to Al's YouTube channel. I'll be posting lots of really cool new videos. So let's go. Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Door County Girl. And today I am here with my friend Kenny Church. And if you don't know who he is, he used to own Sister Bay Automotive, which is in Sister Bay down the road here north of Sister Bay. And it is now an empty lot, which makes me really sad. I was probably one of his best customers because I would never get a new car. I had to keep my 99 Toyota 4Runner until the frame broke. And I thought, why can't you fix it? I just need you to fix it. But in honor of Ken, I'm using my I Love My El Camino mug because he gave it to me as a gift. So you couldn't put anything online on Facebook without me saying, hey, will you make me one of those?
Yeah, exactly.
And then Kenny made me it's a wooden board, and it has a wine glass, and it has a coffee cup. And it says how to tell time,
right.
AM, PM.
Made a couple of those.
Yeah, because you put it on Facebook and then everybody wanted one.
Yep.
I know.
It was fun. It was fun.
Okay, well, we're here to talk about you and your business and your relationship with my dad and all that good stuff and why you're a Chicago Bear fan and that kind of good stuff. So why don't you take it away and tell me, how did you even end up here in Sister Bay in the first place? And how did you get involved with cars?
Well, it starts when my grandfather came from Sweden when he was 18 with his brother and got a job in Chicago. It was Johnson's Glass Factory, which was my grandfather's uncle. And he worked there until I think 1957, and that's when they used to make a lot of glass pieces for cars and everything else, but when plastic started coming out, the glass business kind of went downhill, so they got rid of the glass factory, and my uncle, or my grandfather's uncle and him, came up here and bought Leonard Swenson's Ford dealership. My grandfather's uncle helped set him up.
Where was that? Right there? Right where you were?
Right where we are in
Okay.
57. It was Sister Bay Motors at the time.
Okay.
It was Swenson Motors, then it was Sister Bay Motors. And he had that from 57 till I think mid-70s. So since he was from Chicago, my mother was from Chicago. So that's pretty much, I was born in the city and moved to the suburbs. And in the summer times, we would come up here and visit my grandparents.
On a little vacation.
Correct, every summer, all summer long. So in fourth grade, my parents were going through a divorce.
Well, wait a second. Did you love Door County back then when you were a kid, when you got to come up
Yeah,
here?
well, we got to go fishing with my grandfather and his uncle out in the big boat and everything else. Mm-hmm. Although fishing never took hold of me. The first time I went fishing with him in the big cabin cruiser, and we dropped the line in, and we waited and waited, and everybody else is catching fish but me. So I'm sitting there waiting and waiting. He says, "That's it, time to go in, Church, let's go." My grandfather always called me Church because my uncle's name was Ken, and he was Ken and I was Church, so he wouldn't get them mixed up.
Okay, yeah.
So anyway, I reeled up the line, and here's this tiny little fish in there. It wasn't any bigger than 2 inches long. That's why I didn't catch anything.
Because it was just sitting
on your line. It was sitting on the line.
You didn't even know it.
Didn't even know it.
Oh my
So
God.
it was, that was my first experience with fishing, so it wasn't a good.
That's funny.
I know, it's funny now.
You could have caught something bigger with that fish.
I know. So I spent summers up there and then back to Chicago. And in fourth grade, I lived up here, went to Ellison Bay School, had Mrs. Dobner for a teacher.
Lawrence Dobner's wife, Mrs.
Yes,
Dobner?
yes.
I had her for a teacher too.
Yeah, in fourth grade.
In fourth grade, yeah.
And then back to the city again and come up here every summer. And I started working for my grandfather. That was my first job, 50 cents an hour, pumping gas for Sister Bay Motors.
Did you like it?
Except for the first job. When I came up here the first job I had to do, my grandfather handed me the broom and says, here, go sweep the parking lot.
That was boring.
And I got a few blisters from that.
Oh, you and my dad that's why you and my dad get along so good.
Yeah. And matter of fact, it was really kind of funny because your dad and his dad, your grandfather,
Yep.
and my grandfather, they would all come into the garage and they all talked Swedish. Nobody understood anything that was going on. Yes.
You never told me that.
Yes, it was. They were quite the character, those
My
three.
grandpa was a loud man.
Yes.
Yeah.
He was great.
Yeah.
Loved him.
He had a nice big booming voice.
And so I started working there, and then when I got out of high school, I finished one summer working as a painter in Chicago because I was making too much money. $300 a week cash in 1970 was a pretty good buck.
As a painter?
As a painter.
Oh, wow.
So I decided I had enough of the city, and I told my friends, drive me to Milwaukee, and I had all my clothes in a backpack and hitchhike up here at 10 o'clock at night and got here at 9 in the morning. And then I asked my grandparents for a job and started working there until he closed up.
Okay, so right when that happened, did you like cars? Were you already?
Oh yes, it was
Did
like
you already know how to work on cars?
on and off because you're pumping gas and you're in the back. You're always trying to learn what these guys are doing.
So they kind of show you stuff here
yeah,
and there.
right, exactly.
But you didn't like do that at home before you went to the garage or anything like that. You just kind of learned hands-on.
I learned everything I know is all hands-on.
Okay, keep going. I like it.
Kenny Chernetsky and Kenny Goebel and
Oh yeah.
Doug Carlson worked there. Lester Olson was in the body shop there. And then the place burnt down in '63.
Oh yeah. What happened?
The fire started in the body shop. I think they had like 5 or 6 cars in there, and they were doing some welding on it, and a little bit of the weld caught the carpeting. And at night, the flames started, and
That was sad.
yes, it was. I was back in Chicago then, so then we came up and saw it, and they were underinsured. So they didn't build the body shop, and Lester went up on his own. Doug Carlson took over the Shell station, and it was just Kenny Goebel and Kenny Chernetsky. And then I came up in the summer times, and I worked the gas pumps, and they worked in back, and I learned how that. Kenny Goebel, since we were a Ford dealership, I learned how to look up parts and stuff like that, so all the warranty stuff.
Okay, but weirdly, Kenny Goebel had the mobile station in Ellison Bay.
Right.
And Charnesky had the gas station here, the Citgo, right?
Yes.
And then who had the gas station over here on Hendrickson Park?
Well, it was Hendrickson, and then Kenny
and
Chernetsky.
right across the street at the Shell. There were so many gas stations. There was 1, 2,
There were 5 gas stations in Sister Bay at one
3,
time.
4, and 5. Yeah.
And now there's 1.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there was.
Well, there's not one like where they have a full-on mechanic in Sister Bay. Gas station.
Well,
Not anymore.
no, not anymore. No,
You were like the only one,
Right.
besides on top of the hill.
yeah, Voight was up there,
Voight's, yeah.
and then he got out, and
Yeah. Now it's just, get your gas and get a Snapple, get a Kit Kat.
yeah. So when my grandfather retired, I think it was 72 or 73, whatever. My uncle went to Ellison Bay and got that gas station. Kenny Chernetsky went to the Hendricksons and got that gas station.
Yep.
And I went to Sturgeon Bay and worked at Bossman Ford in the body shop. And after Bossman Ford in the body shop, I came back and worked for my brother-in-law, Rick Katursky, painting again for a while. Then went back to Sturgeon Bay and worked at Jorn's.
Oh, at the auto place there?
Yeah, at the dealership
Okay.
there. And I worked as a mechanic there, and then I worked in the parts room. And towards the end, I just stayed in the parts room. And it was kind of funny because I wanted a 10-cent raise. Oh, first when he hired me, Hub asked me, he says, well, would you mind getting a haircut? And I said, if I in order to get the job, fine. But to be honest, I just got out of the barber's chair.
You had long hair.
Little longer than, it was the 70s, you know.
Okay,
So,
yeah.
so he says, no, that's fine. So he says, would you work for $7 an hour? And I says, I won't get out of bed for $7 an hour. So he gave me I think a quarter raise. He says, just for a month, just to see how you work out. I says, okay, fine. So I worked for him for a couple of years, and then finally I said, I want a 10-cent raise. He said, we can't afford a 10-cent raise.
10 cents?
I know, it was ridiculous at the time. So I was kind of mad. So me and Candie went to the bowl for dinner.
Okay, but where did Candie come in the picture? Are you going to come tell me that later? Okay, continue the story.
Okay, so
and
anyway.
then we'll catch up with Candie. That's
So,
his wife.
So
Her.
me and Candie went to the bowl for dinner, and Jeff Lund was there. And Jeff Lund had just bought
Yeah, Lund's Auto.
Lund Ford.
Yeah.
He started the Ford
I
dealership.
remember all those cars out
And
there.
Lorene worked for him.
Yeah.
And Lorene says, unbeknownst to me, he says, go ask Kenny Church because he used to work Fords and he knows Ford warranty and everything else, so he'd be good for you. So he thought that'd be
And
fine.
Lorene Lagerquist we called him Loggy. Everybody had a nickname, but I
Right.
mean, he was one of my dad's good friends too. How come we always hung out in gas stations?
That's where you find out all the news, I guess.
I was with my dad. Every time I went anywhere with my dad, we were in a gas station.
That's right, that's right.
All right.
So so Jeff happened to be there, and he says, Lorene gave me your name and you might be looking for a job. And I said, yeah. And I told him the story, what happened at Jordan's, and he says, I'll give you a 25-cent raise from what you're making now. And I said, fine, I'll give him my 2 weeks notice.
Ooh.
So, because I was
Snooze and lose, Jordan's.
I was living in the trailer court.
lost a good mechanic.
And driving all the way to Sturgeon Bay every morning, be to work at 7 and work till 5. In the wintertime, never saw daylight, because I ate lunch inside. So the day before I left, Edgar Jorns came in. He says, we'll give you $1 an hour more to stay. I says, sorry, you're too late. So I says, I knew we should have given you more money.
Yeah, he should have known.
So I went to work for Jeff, and he had the auto parts store, plus he had the Ford dealership, and worked for him for 5 years. And after the 5 years, I said, I bought half the business from him. I just bought the shop from him. And he kept the auto parts business for 1 year. And then the following year, I bought everything from him. And then I went around delivering parts and had Lorene and had a couple mechanics in back. And
So you weren't actually fixing cars, you had people to fix them for you.
Right. I stayed out
You
of
were the parts guy.
Right. I stayed out. I didn't want to get my hands dirty anymore. I liked doing the auto parts and everything else, you know. So
you're good at that.
and after I worked there till we sold the business.
Okay, so now we're going to backtrack a little bit. So where did Candie come in the picture? So you got married somewhere in there, or you met Candie. How did you meet Candie?
I met her at a party at who's barn?
And just so you know, Candie worked here at Al Johnson's as a waitress.
For God knows how many years, since she was, 14 or whatever?
And her mother, June Katursky, was my dad's secretary.
Right.
Forever.
Forever and ever.
Forever and ever and ever until she died.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
So there was a party at some guy's house, actually out in his barn. So, and was happened to be New Year's Eve. So she was the closest one around New Year's Eve that I grabbed for a New Year's kiss.
Oh.
and the rest is history.
How nice is that?
We got married in '72, had 3 boys.
Yep, 3 awesome boys.
They all took turns working at the garage with me doing little things, except for Cole. Cole didn't want anything to do with it.
So Cole went into the military, right?
Yeah, Cole, when he graduated from high school, he went into the Army.
Okay. Is he still in the Army?
No, he spent 21 years, now he's out.
Okay. And where does he live now?
Out in Colorado Springs.
And isn't he a cook or a chef?
No, that was Clark.
Clark.
Clark had his own business for a while, and then now he's working for food suppliers, like your Cisco.
Right, and I think Clark is the one that my brother Rolf is always battling about soup.
Yes,
Because
yes.
Clark always wins the soup contest.
Won it 5 years in a row.
Rolf said that's because I don't live out there. I'd be winning every contest if I lived out there. They go back and forth. You know?
Yeah, Church's Chowder, it's called.
Yeah, Church's Chowder.
Clam
Yeah.
chowder, it's excellent, excellent.
And then, so those are your two younger sons.
Right.
And then
And Chris
is
was
the oldest.
Chris went to Lakeland College for a couple years, and then for some reason he decided he's going to get in the mechanic training program. So he went to Broadway, and they sponsored him. So he worked for Broadway after class, and then learned how to be a mechanic. I tried to talk him out of it.
I was going to say, probably hitting himself over the head
I
now.
says, do you really want to get in this business?
Yeah, I mean, like, Ken,
Don't.
there are days when I go in there, and Kenny, I don't know how you do it, but your back was bad. How many back surgeries have you had?
2 back surgeries.
Your
so,
knees, your hips, everything.
Yes.
You guys contort.
Takes a toll on you when you're walking on pavement since you've been 12.
And
you know,
crawling under cars.
Crawling
and,
under cars.
Yeah.
Who needs yoga when you can go be like this, a
that's
contortionist?
that's car
you know?
yoga for you right there. That could be a business for you, car yoga. Forget goat yoga.
So
So Chris ended up learning.
So after Broadway and learning how to be a mechanic and everything, I had a fight with Broadway what they were going to offer him to pay him, and I had to pay Chris in order to come work for me. So he worked for me 20-some years, 30 years, whatever. And let's see, it was COVID hit in what, 1920?
Yep.
Or 2019, 2020, whatever. Anyway, and I always promised your brother that he would have first crack
Oh boy.
at buying
Yep,
my business because he owned the land behind me.
Yeah, so my brother Lars bought the Swenson property there, and it's a house. It's got an apartment upstairs.
And 2 cottages.
And 2 cottages. And they're on the water, and weirdly, it's behind your gas station.
Right.
And there was a fence back there.
Right.
And then half of Lars's property is on Liberty Grove, and the other half of Lars's property, the house, is Sister Bay.
Right.
So you're right on the property line.
Right. Well, Sister Bay Motors was, the building was in Liberty Grove and the parking lot was Sister Bay.
That's crazy. Did you have to pay 2 different taxes
Yes.
as well?
Yes. and since the parking lot is residential, I could never
What
build
are you across
anything.
the street?
That's Sister Bay.
Okay, 'cause he lives directly
That's a
across
dividing line. Now.
Okay.
And actually, 3 foot of the building of Sister Bay Motors or Sister Bay Auto was in Sister Bay, but for tax purpose, they put the whole thing in Liberty Grove.
Yeah.
So I says, fine, whatever. You know.
I'm so happy that I used to pull in my cars and park them in the front and take pictures of your garage because I had no idea that would ever be torn down.
I know it was. You know.
It's so sad.
It took me a while to get used to that. I mean,
And Candie had these beautiful gardens out front. I'd always go there and look at her hummingbirds and all that stuff. Yeah.
40 years of, well, actually 39 years of actually owning the business, and then
And then you sold it to Lars.
I sold it to Lars. Well, I told him, I said, are you interested? Because I always promised you. And he says, no, it's COVID hit. And he says, it's the wrong time. I says, not a problem. I just wanted to let you know because I promised you. I'm a man of my word.
Mm-hmm.
So then I let the word out to a lot of people that I'm ready to sell, and year goes by.
And your son was not interested.
No, he didn't want anything to do with this whole business.
Okay.
He didn't mind working the cars, but he didn't want the auto parts and the gas and all that other stuff that went along with it.
Well, weirdly, you ended up back working on cars with Chris, and Candie was the parts gal.
Right. Well, that's because I lost a mechanic.
Yeah.
And so, in order to stay busy,
You had to get back there.
I had to get back there,
Do
and I
a
couldn't
little
find
more car
anybody.
yoga.
Couldn't find anybody else. Finding help. Experienced help is
Yeah.
hard to find.
That's
So
even now so with
Oh,
Chris.
it's terrible.
Yeah, because
Terrible
when I
to
go out
find.
there, he's so busy, he doesn't have time for anything. And I always
and we
say,
were 2 weeks out all the time.
I know, I'm always like, you need a mechanic. He goes, yeah, I know. He goes, I can't get anyone to work.
Well, then I stole your help. Nestor worked for us for a
Yeah.
year.
But
So-
yeah.
And then I couldn't offer Lester any more money. He decided to go to Green Bay.
Yep,
So I
I
says,
know.
well, whatever.
Okay, so then Lars bought it when?
Well,
He
so
changed his
I
mind?
worked for another year, and then Candie and Chris said, your word of mouth is not working. You better go see a realtor.
Yeah.
So I talked to my friend, Craig Bastian. I says, I'm ready to sell. And he says, how much you want? And I told him, he says, well, give me a couple days and I'll get back to you to make sure what you're asking is fair for the market. I says, okay, fine. The very next day, Lars calls me and says, I'm interested.
And he didn't know that you already talked to
No.
Craig?
No.
Oh.
Nobody knew anything.
Weird.
And I even talked to Craig and I told him the whole story with Lars. And so the next day, I told Lars, I says, well, I already talked to Craig. He said, don't worry about it. The very next day, Craig called me and says, guess who I got a phone call from? I said, I know exactly, from Lars.
I didn't even know this story.
So he says, he's interested. I says, I know. He says, I feel bad. He says, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it, because we never signed any papers or anything like that. And he says, whatever, don't worry about it, Ken. I says, okay, fine. So Lars bought the property, and I was able to stay there till the end of the year. Got all my stuff out, and Chris says, he thought my business was going to last a lot longer, wasn't going to sell this quick. So him and Matt Peterson decided to buy a food truck.
And Matt Peterson, for those of you that don't know, he owns Casey's and Pelletiers, right?
And part owner of...
the food truck.
No.
Oh, the boathouse.
Boathouse.
The boathouse in Sister Bay. And that's Danny Peterson's son, who owned the Viking restaurant in Ellison Bay.
Who used to be the head cook here.
Who used to also be our kitchen manager. I know, it's a small world, people.
It
Just
sure
trying
is.
to keep you updated. All right.
Sure is. So anyway, they bought the food truck together. But they got, because of COVID, and it took an extra year in order to get it going and get built.
Yeah.
So anyway, Chris says, well, I like to be in the business. I'll build a shop out by my house. And I says, fine, I'll lend you the money and we'll go from there. He says, because I just want to fix cars. I don't want to do all that other stuff. I says, okay, fine. So we built a shop out by him. We took all the equipment, because Lars had no use for it, and hauled it out to Chris's and put it all up.
And I kept thinking that he was going to keep the gas station. In my head, I'd be like, why is Lars going to buy that? Yes, because it's part of that property there.
Right.
But I thought it would be great for him to keep the property, keep the gas tank in the ground, and have the pumps,
Yeah.
because his son Thor has a boat business right there.
Right.
And they're getting gas every day. So I
Right.
thought, well, then they would buy their gas wholesale.
Well, that was his thought too.
I
That
think
he was
that's
gonna-
what we all thought.
Right, and
Yeah.
I think things just changed.
And
you
then it
know?
just changed, and they didn't want to deal with it, so they just ripped it all out,
There's
right?
no sense paying taxes for a building you're not going to use. So
Okay.
they tore it down.
I
and,
suppose.
And I got films of all that stuff taking it down, and I know. I told my mother at the time, I says, I didn't shed a tear, which is maybe a little lie.
Liar.
But it was sad to see it go, because it was because it was built in 1919, so it was over 100 years old.
It was a cool building.
Yes, it wasn't as big as the original one. But
I
it was
loved
still
how
nice.
yours was, and how it said Sister Bay Automotive all the way across.
Yeah.
And the other one I loved was the Shell gas station,
Yeah.
that Stone Shell gas
Yeah.
station, and it had that "Service is our business"
Yeah.
with the Shell symbol.
Yeah.
And I always was sad when they tore that down too. That was sad.
Well, it's all history. All the gas stations get all
Everything
tore down.
changes. I get
know,
it. I
you
know, but it's sad sometimes.
I know. It took me over a year to get used, because you look across the street and the building's not there.
Now Kenny has the best view, sunset every night, and the moon setting.
Yeah.
Every night he's got a perfect view of the bay, because that building is gone, because he lives right there.
Yes, that was nice. And
Yeah, you don't even live on the water, and you're on the water.
right, and I don't have to fix the fence that was there, because I would
Oh,
knock
boy,
it down
that
every
fence, yeah.
knock it down every year with
Yeah.
my snow plowing.
I
so,
hear you.
So
So then Chris ended up keeping the name Sister Bay Auto, or
no,
is he
he's
Church's Auto?
Church Automotive.
Church Automotive. And because I take my car there now.
Yeah, we kept the same phone number, so it was easier to
I know, 'cause
transfer the business.
I haven't changed it out of my phone.
Right, so they call him.
I go, call Sister Bay Auto, and he's like, Church's Auto. And I'm like,
so, and he's busy as all heck. I wish I worked in that building all those years because it's nice.
He's so busy.
Yes, he's he's a one-man show.
Oh, I know. I always tell him, look, I have plenty of time. Don't worry about it. Just tell me when you have time.
Yeah.
Because my black El Camino needed new front brakes.
Right.
So he bought the brakes, and he had them sitting there and sitting there and sitting there. He goes, you might as well come out here and pick up the brakes. I'm not going to have time for it. I go, that's perfect. I got to go put it in storage anyway. It's winter. I don't drive it. So I took all the stuff and took it, and I know how busy he is, so I'm like, whatever. Yeah. I always have something to drive, a bike, dirt bike.
You got a few cars, right?
I got an old car. They all need work. That's why I miss you. You know what I miss about him is that he never jacked you around. You always just, even if I wanted to spend the money, you would always say, why would you do that? You talk me down to earth on this old truck. Just put a blah, blah, blah on there and let it run till it breaks again. And
you got to be realistic. You try to instill that when customers, I pretended it was my car. Would I stick that money in that junk? No, go buy another car.
You know what's good about that?
Yeah, it's worth fixing. And Chris does the same thing.
You would say that, your son says that, and you guys are mechanics. And I know that when Bo had cancer, I would always say to them, well, what would you do if this was your son? And they hated that question. The doctors, the nurses, everyone else, because I didn't know. But when I asked you guys the questions, you'd be right out there in my face. I'm like, what? Like, I mean.
You got to be honest and you got to be realistic in order to have a good business.
Which was really nice because that's not always so in this world.
No.
Yeah. I know Rolf's got all these old cars and he's always running around. I go, why don't you just take it to so-and-so? Are you kidding me? You know how much I paid for a blah, blah, blah last time there? Yeah. Blah, blah, blah. He's always grumpy. I go, well, that's what you get for buying a $1,000 car.
Yeah, it's...
Right?
Pay me now or pay me later. Pay payments on a new car or pay for parts to fix up the old
I work to pay for my car. That's what I do.
Right.
Yeah.
That's right.
No vacation time. You just pay for your car.
Right.
So none of you know that Ken is a woodworker. So you couldn't wait sort of to retire because you built a little barn behind your house.
Yeah, that was my stress reliever when I was a mechanic.
And he's a beautiful woodworker.
I like tinkering with wood, and I make stuff that, and somebody asked me, why don't you start making stuff to sell? I says, then it becomes a job. I don't want a job.
You just want it to be fun.
I want it fun. So the stuff I made for you, I made for Jill and Lars.
I offered to pay for it too, by the way. I said, I'll buy one if you make it. Sometimes I send him a picture and go, hey, if you make me this, I'll buy it.
I did sell one, a guy up at the bank. I forget his name off the top of my head now. Anyway, I made his son a rocking horse out of walnut and maple.
Aww.
And I says, give me $100 for the material that it cost me, and he says, fine. And I made that for him. And then
he'll have that forever.
Yes, it was well done, and
Did you sign it?
No, I didn't sign it.
You gotta be like Bill Beckstrom and burn it in there.
I know.
Or Ozzie Berstrom, he's painted them, the little rocking horses.
I enjoy what I'm doing now, so retirement is great.
You get to hang out in his shack. What do you call him? A his hut? a he hut instead of a she hut?
I go up to Chris's every day just to see what's going on, if I got to help bleed brakes.
So does Chris ever...
He's trying to reel me back in. I says, no.
I know that you do stuff for him, though, because you
little stuff, you know. I help a little bit that I can, that I want to.
You know what's nice about him and Chris? If I have to work all the time, I leave the keys in the car. They just come down and get it, and then they just take it down there, and then they bring it back when they're done. And that was like, where does anyone do that anymore? Yeah. And then I used to tell, I think one of these old ladies asked me once if I knew of anyone, and I said you, and you were nice enough to do that for her, and she couldn't believe it.
I used to do that
I've never had that happen
all the
before.
time. Go up to scan and pick up cars and deliver them. And
that's like an added touch. That's why we all went to him.
Just good public relations, as they say, right?
Yes. Well, I miss your garage. I really miss your garage. It just stinks to not see it there. I'm like, great. Lars owns it now or whatever. But it's weird to drive by that empty lot.
Yeah, it took a little getting used to.
Yeah.
You know, it's.
I think I took one of the best sunset pictures there ever with your garage and Candie's flowers all in bloom. And I always, every now and then, send it to you. I have it.
I got pictures of your El Camino in front of the garage.
I have both of them. And my truck.
And your truck. I must have 30 to 40 different pictures
of cars
that would stop in for gas. And one day we must have had, there were Model Ts that drove in.
I saw them on your Facebook page.
I had so many pictures, wonderful pictures of customers' cars and stuff.
I remember one time I went in there with my El Camino or something, or I was gonna, and there was a car in there, I don't even know, it was so fancy it looked like it was an outer space vehicle. And the guy was all like, whoa, like, don't touch it, I'm like, what is this?
Yeah,
He's like, step away from the car.
Yeah.
What was that?
I don't remember exactly.
Yeah, it was just before you tore it down, and you worked on it a lot. And I asked you, what is that fancy thing? I don't know if it was a Ferrari. It was something crazy. Like something very modern and very crazy. And I thought, how does Kenny even know how to work on this?
I can't recall off the top of my head.
I see it every now and then parked down by JJ's.
If I saw it, I would probably remember. But,
yeah, I think it was blue. It's a Chevy, I thought, but I don't know if it's a Corvette or a weird kind of Corvette. I don't know, but anyway, yeah, you have a lot of cool pictures.
Yeah, there were a lot of nice memories, you know.
Yeah.
So it was.
I love that though. That's the best part of the history stuff. You got to make sure that the Village of Sister Bay has a lot of.
They said,
copies.
yeah. Matter of fact, I even have a picture of the original building that was built in 1919.
But you've got to save this stuff because.
Oh, I've got it saved.
But you got to make sure they get it too, because they put everything now on little.
Yeah, right.
To save it all.
I sent them a bunch of different pictures and stuff. So.
Okay. Last question. Why are you a Bears fan? And why is my dad a Bears fan with you? Why are you two such Bears fans? Al Johnson's a Bears fan and a Cubs fan. Die hard.
When you grow up in the city, that's.
And there's the cameraman back there, Bill, giving the thumbs up. Oh boy.
You're a Packer fan, right?
Yes.
If you moved to Illinois, would you become a Bear fan?
I don't think so.
Same thing. I cannot change.
I don't think I could do
And
that.
I'm a Cub fan too, but I'm not one of them Cub fans that hate the White Sox.
Okay.
So I cheered for the White Sox when they won the World Series.
Yeah, well, my
but not
mom
harder
likes
than
the
the
White
Cubs
Sox.
when the Cubs won the World Series, you know.
Well, you and my dad were two peas in a pod.
And your brother is still a Bear fan too. So.
Oh yeah, Rolf is now a Bear fan, a big Bear fan.
So.
Yeah, he's got Bear golf clubs, Bear jackets, Bear hats. The other day, this is a funny story. I don't think you heard this. Charlie Barron's.
Don't know.
The guy, yeah, you do. He's the Manitowoc Minute.
Oh, okay.
Okay, he came in here because he did a little stint at the auditorium.
Okay.
And he was sitting at a table in here.
Okay.
And Rolf came out of the kitchen with his Chicago Bears hat on. And he walked over to the table and he looks at Charlie and he goes, "Hey, Charlie." Points at the hat. And he goes, Rolf's in his cook clothes. And he goes, "No way, man, you're not making my breakfast." And he goes, "Oh yeah, I am. Oh yeah." And Charlie Barron's is like, "Damn." It was
pretty
so
good.
funny. It would have been a perfect little stint for the Manitowoc Minute because he's a diehard Packer fan.
Yeah.
And Rolf's got the bear hat on, and they were just glaring. Rolf was giving him the stink eye. But
it's a fun rivalry. It's all in good fun.
Yeah, it is.
Most people get
How did you and
along.
my dad get to be such good friends?
Because he'd stop down for coffee.
He said, "You're going to be my friend, and that's all there is to it."
You know, I told this to the reporter one time when they asked how I got up here and everything else, and I told him I hitchhiked, and he asked for a funny story. I says, "Well, Al Johnson stopped in every day for coffee."
And a donut.
And because
guys
Candie
always
always
had cookies.
had cookies or donuts or always something.
And what did you always give me because you guys were sick of them?
Those Goo Goo bars.
Goo Goo bars. Every Christmas you get a big box of Goo Goo clusters.
That was from my tech line.
Yes, and they just were so sick of them. I'd go in there and I'd just like keep piling them in my pockets, bring them down here to work, Goo Goo clusters.
So your dad came in for coffee and he says, "Church, come here. Kenny, come here." He says, "You don't believe this. I was just at Berto's and some guy took off with the gas hose in his car. He's telling me, and he's laughing and carrying on, and in the meantime, he's getting gas in the station wagon. And I says, okay, fine, Al. I says, I got to go, so I got to get back to work. So he takes off and leaves. Sure enough, he took my gas hose with him.
That's not the first time.
Well, it was the first time by me, anyway.
For you, but guess what? He did it at Birdo's too. He drove away with the gas hose, and I guess I gotta confess, one day I went to Birdo's.
Yep.
Never happened to me before either. I don't know what I was thinking or what was busy. It was summer. Put it in there, filled it up. Zach Zoloff was working at Birdo's, and I get in the car, drive away. I'm already home. My landline is ringing. I'm like, well, what's my phone ringing? And I'm like, go answer it. And Zach goes, hey, Annika, did you just get gas? And I'm like, yeah. And he goes, you drove off with the gas hose. I said, no, I didn't. He goes, look outside. And there it is, hanging off. I go, oh my God, did I just rip out the whole tank and do an explosion? He goes, no, they're made to be broken off.
Yeah.
But my dad did it there too.
Yes, yeah.
I did it too.
So that was pretty comical.
Yeah. Well, Ken is one of my best friends up here. I love talking to him. I love his wife, Candie. She's amazing. I loved your mom. She was amazing. I mean, not your mom, but
Candie's.
June Kotursky was our secretary. We called her June Bug. She did everything here, June Bug. She had her own desk in my dad's office. Yeah, my dad treated her like a queen. Nobody messed with June.
No,
ever.
That was true.
Yeah, so anyway.
And you know, one thing too, that Al was only closed on what, Christmas?
Yeah, Christmas Day and Thanksgiving Day.
Well, they were closed to the public because we had our wedding reception here because of June.
Oh.
So that was a rare event.
Yeah, that's a rare event. Now we do it sometimes for fixing things, but back then, never, ever.
72, so 72, he had this place closed for us.
Yeah, 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. every day.
Yeah.
Except for Christmas Day and Thanksgiving Day. Yeah. That's cool. Well, anyways, we could talk and on and on and on and on because Ken's got a lot of good stories. And he's retired now, and I don't think you can catch up with him because I'm not going to send him to your wood shop. Because you can't go to the gas station anymore.
No, I can't do that either.
No. Well, anyways.
I stop in here for lunch.
You can go on his Sister Bay Auto page, though. You still have your Facebook page.
Yeah, it's under Church Automotive, I believe now.
You should go on it and look back at the old pictures because they're very cool, and it's a really neat thing to go back and look at. Well, anyways, I thank you for coming here and joining me.
Thank you. It was very enjoyable.
He didn't even want a cup of coffee. I was going to let him drink out of my cup that he gave me. Don't forget to like and subscribe at the bottom of the screen, and we will see you next time. Bye, everyone.
Bye now. Thank you.
Thanks for watching Door County Girl. Don't forget to subscribe, and we will see you next time.